to the France 24 debate. The French president can tick several boxes at the end of the first day of his first official visit to China. A deal is in the works for Airbus to build 60 planes for the Chinese market. That's worth about 6 billion euros. And French nuclear giant Areva has also signed several accords. But François Hollande has acknowledged the steep imbalance in trade between Paris and Beijing. And the Chinese themselves are asking for better access to French and European markets. My panel tonight is ready to grapple with some of these thorny issues, so I'll introduce them. Olivier Coipot, hello. You're the founder of Mavelin Strategic Finance, based in Shanghai, in China. We've also got Jean-François Dimelieu, who is a former banker with extensive experience in China, so the president of the Asia Center. Hello to you. We have Emmanuel Lanco, who is an academic and editor of the review Monde Chinois, or Chinese World. Welcome to you, Emmanuel.
Good evening.
And we'll also be joined shortly from Beijing by André Lozekrug-Pietri, who is chairman and managing partner of A Capital, which is the leading Euro-China equity fund. Let's have a listen first to President Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, on the first day of François Hollande's trip. And this is talking about the business relationship between China and France, and more broadly, between China and Europe.
China is prepared to import more French products, and we hope that France, for its part, will work towards an easing by the European Union of its restrictions on high-tech exports to China. When our hands and feet are tied, we cannot walk in step with one another.
Despite that sort of positive-sounding message, Jean-François Dimelieu, in fact, the French have been losing market share, haven't they, steadily in China?
Yes, France is losing market share, while, for example, UK, and you must see that the Financial Times is quite proud of it today in its recent release. Yes, but there is a general trend within the Eurozone, except Germany, of course. So this is not coming as a real surprise that France is losing market share in China. What also can be remembered is that France, in spite this lost market share, is investing in China. This is something that has to be repeated frequently, that France is one of the large European investors in China.
In what fields are you talking about?
French companies do have big amounts of staff based in China. This is, for example, the engineering industries. Of course, Schneider and Alstom do have quite a big amount of people working for them in China, not mentioning, of course, the car industry, even though the car industry is not, as we all know, the most successful in China. But yet, if you take PSA, for example, they are making more profits in China than anywhere else. So I think, yes, trade is one thing. Definitely efforts have to be paid to improve trade, and I think there will be improvements in the future. Yet, investments are yielding quite some interesting benefits to French investors.
Nonetheless, I want to come to Olivier Coipot. I'm sorry. There's a real problem of French small and medium-sized enterprises. They can't really seem to get through in the market, can they? I mean, the way that the Germans have been able to.
Well, accessing the Chinese market is a bit of a challenge always, because it needs a very thorough preparation in order to make sure that everything is aligned to be successful in China. And of course, when some companies are coming to China with the idea that things are going to be easy, there is some kind of disappointment at some point. So more and more what we see is French companies, especially SMEs, being better prepared, especially in terms of key steps and timeline. Timeline is very important because it requires a very long-term presence and a very long-term commitment in China. And of course, a successful Chinese implementation of business cannot be made overnight.
What about that comment that the Chinese president made? We just heard him saying that there should be, a reduction in barriers in Europe, in the European Union. Are things really stuck basically between France and China because the EU won't lower these barriers, and therefore China sort of makes it difficult for Western companies to go there?
Yes and no. Once again, if we take investments, if we take the European market, if we take trade, the only real effective barrier to China so far, agreed by everyone in Europe and passed by European regulation, is on China ware. The other ones are yet under discussion, but have not yet been implemented.
China ware?
Yes, China ware. Porcelain in French. So the Chinese porcelain is somewhat blocked because it's dumping its prices. I'm not joking. This is the real barrier that the Europeans have found efficient against China. For the rest, yes, we are discussing a lot. Conversely, I mentioned the engineering companies in China, and indeed they can invest. But if you want to invest into telecoms, if you want to invest into automotive industry, you are blocked to a certain amount. It depends according to the industries in China. Whereas Geely was able to buy into Volvo. Volvo is Chinese now, and you do not have one single fully owned car company making cars in China and invested by Europeans.
Yeah. Emmanuel, how do you see the relationship today? Is it basically stuck because of this trade imbalance?
Not only because there is a disbalance also about the relationship, the political relationship itself. Since 1997, this disbalance is bigger and bigger years after years. And the challenge for President Hollande is to find another way to convince the Chinese partner that getting better with such a relation is a way also to facilitate all the relationships between China and the rest of the world. Because France has diplomatic tools, Germany hasn't, you see. And Chinese know this matter of fact. So this is very important now, both for the Chinese and the French, to find another way to establish, to renew their relationship. And we should remind the matter of fact that next year there will be a very important anniversary concerning the reconnaissance of China by France and de Gaulle, in 1964. So,
but we usually hear that Germany has much more power within Europe vis-à-vis China than France. You're going against that.
Yes, but in another aspects, like Africa, like the peace of the world, especially the problem in the Middle East, France as a partner is a very important partner, more than Germany, in fact. And China will have to find also new economical partners in these very strategic fields such as sustainable development, you see. So this is a way also for Hollande and France to have maybe a new chance for the future.
So you're saying China needs France diplomatically more than this visit is being given credit for in the media so far?
It is important for the two sides. It is important also for Hollande to remind that some subjects like human rights are very important also to be criticized and to be commented also. So we are just at a crossroad, and for Hollande also it is a kind of test because it is his first official visit into China, and for Xi Jinping and the new Chinese governance team, it is very important too because this is the first time for them to welcome a Westerner such a politician man, such an important politician man. So the issue is very important for the both sides, I would say.
Let's talk more about what France expects from it, because we've heard what the Chinese expectations are: a better access to French and European markets, but. What about French hopes for investment from China? That's obviously also a big issue. Let's take a listen to President François Hollande on this trip.
They also called on Chinese investors to come to France to take their place in the productive apparatus in cooperation with French companies and to allow Chinese investors to contribute to the creation of jobs and of economic activity.
Olivier Quapo, that sounds all very well, but in reality, surely the Chinese see the French market for what it is, which is laden with debt and with heavy labor regulation.
I would probably go a little bit against the first point, which means laid with debt. I don't think that's really the perception in China. However, certainly, the Chinese have a concern regarding heavy regulations, not only in France, but I would say in another set of European countries. And the way they are approaching the European market, in fact, is actually to trade between 27 different countries to see where they should invest as a priority. So I think that when we are reflecting on the position of France in that perspective, we should remember that China is looking at 27 doors. So we need to be attractive, and we need to do everything we can to facilitate their life if we want them to invest in France.
Is China really making a difference today, you think, in this dire French economic situation, though? I mean, has it created many jobs, for example, in France?
Well, China has not created any jobs from France for simple reasons. Is that China has not invested that much so far, especially in industrial fields. The biggest investment by China into France is for a financial deal, which is between GDF Suez and the Chinese sovereign wealth fund, and that brings up the Chinese investment into France to almost or beyond 2 billion euros altogether. If you take that out, we are down to probably a couple or a handful of 100 million euros. So this is far from creating jobs, but it probably has preserved some jobs. If you take, for example, one of the famous investments by China into France, which is Moteur Baudouin, which is, a tiny company making very, very specific mechanical engineering in La Ciotat. This is typically the type of situation which could have led to pure disposal of assets and laying off people. Maybe not, but the fact that Chinese invested into that company obviously made it survive and probably raise its profile as well. Now, people who didn't know about Moteur Baudouin know about it. The other investments...
So you're saying basically China at least managed to stop a loss of jobs,
well, I'm
if
just
not actually
one
creating.
example. This is not a massive example. We're just talking about a very tiny example. Yet, there are examples of cooperation between China investing into France and France, which is one investment which is probably the most successful, which is called Blue Star. Blue Star is the remainders of what used to be Adiceo and what used to be long time ago the Rhodia Group. This is chemicals, and at the end of the day, there has been quite some money invested in that, and products developed, and quite a good cooperation between Chinese teams and French teams. Well, that being said, of course, this is only an example, and there are not that many. It's very difficult for Chinese to invest in France, not only because of regulation, there are cultural issues, and there are also a decision-making process on both sides, not our side, but Chinese side as well.
Sorry, yes, go ahead, Olivier.
So, probably what we also need to consider as far as Chinese investments are concerned is that so far Chinese have been very much testing waters to see how things are going. And, China is relying a lot on the basis of experience. And basically, China is building on stories, building on experience. So it's very important that those different experiences, you mentioned Moteur Baudouin, we can also mention the investment of Kelty or the investment in McCormack. This shows that those three examples have been reasonably successful. Now we need to help them probably to move to the next step. And this reminds me very much of the situation that we had in 1984 when Japan was looking at investment in France and was a little bit testing water as well, because of course the culture was not the same.
But I believe the Chinese investors would like to stop the story there, because not all Japanese investments were that successful. So they probably hope not to copy the example. But Chinese are very good at studying the wrong examples and not to do the same mistakes.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there is a strong China bashing in the Western countries, and especially in France. Everyone fears China and its industries, and it is necessary now for both sides to facilitate also the exchanges and the way also to cooperate more and to understand more each other, of course. And there is a still cultural, there is a strong and still cultural background to facilitate such an exchange between the two countries.
So obviously some success stories you're talking about, but let's keep it in perspective. Because there are a lot of sectors which are not making, which have not made inroads. And we're talking telecoms. What other kind of industries do you think do have a chance in the next few years to break through?
Well, telecoms is the other way around, right? It's the European industry which cannot break through into China, just the same way the European automotive industry cannot break through into China. I think there is very strong will by Chinese investors to acquire technology that might be through very small investments. But yes, technology, especially related to cars, to car manufacturing, to engineering, is exactly the way to go.
Okay, we'll pick it up again, but we're just going to have a short break now, and we'll go to Beijing in the second half of this debate. So please don't go away. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.